let's talk about egg reserve. In medical terms, we usually call that ovarian reserve, but I know what you're talking about. So what we mean by that is this. You have, when you're a teenager on average, you'll have about 200,000 eggs in each ovary, 400,000 total. And that's on average. I mean, it's a bell-shaped curve, but that's on average. But those eggs are, you don't even see them on ultrasound. Those are called resting follicles. They're tiny. You don't see them even on ultrasound. And they're quiescent, they're dormant. And that's your reserve. And on average, every month, 1,000 of those resting follicles leave the resting phase and develop over the next 4.5 months into antral follicles that are sensitive to pituitary hormones and can enter, therefore, the ovulatory cycle. It's very important. Many reproductive endocrinologists don't understand this. That recruitment of the resting follicles and 4.5 months later appearing as an ovulatory follicle is not dependent on any hormones. It's not affected by any hormones. It's purely an inexorable process related to the tissue pressure gradient from the outside of your ovary, the cortex, to the inside, to the soft medulla. It's purely pressure gradient. Now, our studies have shown that what happens is that under high pressure, which is the highly dense fibrous cortex where these resting follicles live, the eggs inside those tiny follicles, the nucleus is rotating. And that's preventing the egg from being recruited. It's very, very resistant to damage that way. But once there's low pressure, that rotation stops, and then the egg begins to develop over 4.5 months and gets ready for what we call meiosis, and gets ready to be sensitive to the gonadotropins, or the pituitary hormones, so it enters the ovulatory cycle. Now, we tend to measure the ovarian reserve by either AMH levels on blood or ultrasound, looking at antral follicles. But that's not the real ovarian reserve. That's just proportional to the ovarian reserve. In other words, that antral follicle that we can see on ultrasound, the number of antral follicles are proportional to the number of resting follicles, but you don't see those resting follicles. So we might have an antral follicle count that's pretty low, something like 5. That's a very, very low antral follicle count. But you have 5,000 eggs, but they're resting follicles. So you might have a long time to go before you're out of those eggs, even though you have a low antral follicle count and a low AMH. So age is really crucial for the fertility of the egg, and less important is the number of eggs. So I hope that answers you in a simple way, but I can talk to you more about it in more detail, or you can read. I've got this all in my book. I'm not trying to sell a book. You can get it in the library or look at it online, or read all about this on my website. So I don't want to sell anything, but there's a lot of information about it, and I'm happy to tell you that Dr. Hayashi from Japan and I have done, and Dr. Gosden, who's now retired, have done most of the research on this that really tells us how the ovary works. And I have a paper that just came out online in RBMO. It's a very popular fertility scientific journal in which I talk about our research on this in a major way. So you can find that online as well.